Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of In Between Rounds with me, Steven Diaz. Today I have the honor and privilege again to have an interview with uh, Muay Thai champion, author, and all around just great human being, Mr. The Soul Assassin himself, Kevin Ross.
What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, brother. So let's get right into it. As you know, this is a kind of an interview session to just kind of get to know your favorite fighters. I'm a fan, so I want the people who don't quite know you so well to get to know you a little bit better. So give us where it all started. How did you get onto the scene, and what started you off to the path that you are to be the man you are today?
That's a tough one to unpack. A lot of things. As far as the fighting goes, I always had a love for fighting. I had a love for athletics and competition. Something always drew me to the fight world, just from the outside. I mean, I didn't start until I was 23 years old. So, but anytime I would see fights on TV, boxing, martial arts movies, just felt like this ignition in my soul that I connected with, and as I got a little bit older in my teenage years, I considered maybe trying out boxing or something, but I really loved martial arts, and I never saw any real martial arts fighting other than, karate, taekwondo, like sparring competitions, that kind of thing. So it was never anything that really I connected to like I did when I would see boxing fights. And one day in 98, I believe, it might have even been 96, I actually forget, I have it written down somewhere. I was watching ESPN at like 2 a.m, and they used to show these old Thai boxing fights as well as other things. And I remember the TV came on, the commentator said, this next fight is a Muay Thai match between so-and-so. And Muay Thai, I don't remember ever hearing about Muay Thai before. Maybe once or twice in passing, but didn't know anything about it. And as soon as they started fighting, I knew that was everything I'd been looking for. That was it. That was what it was. And even at that time, it wasn't like I saw this and thought, I'm going to do this one day. It was just, if I ever want to pursue this kind of martial arts, this fighting, then it's going to be Muay Thai. But I kind of put it in the back of my mind, never really thought much about it. And every once in a while I would see a fight again, a boxing fight, a MMA fight. And it would just ignite that drive to want to do this and try it out. But it wasn't until, this was 98 that I actually went down to a gym and talked to the people about maybe signing up one day. And then, at that stage, I knew I was already far behind. Starting at 18, I felt like I was getting a late start at that time, and I knew that if I wanted to progress quickly, I would need to do, private lessons and training every day. And then when I found out how much that was going to cost, I was just like, there's no way. I couldn't even afford, the classes at that time. I didn't have any money. I didn't have anything.
I think that's one of the I'm sorry. I think that's one of the things that people overlook a lot. And is one thing that I dealt with myself. The desire to learn, the desire to want to be there, but not having the money, to pay, and in some senses, and there was a point where I was calling gyms and offering to, I'll mop the floors every night, I'll clean up for you guys, whatever it took. Now, when you first started, late 90s or so, I know that's a little bit sort of the birth of, mixed martial arts, or it's always been around, but it was getting a little bit more play, a little bit more mainstream. Was it hard to find a Muay Thai gym? I know growing up at that time, I was a little on the younger side, but it was mostly karate, taekwondo. They were huge at that time. So was it hard for you to find a Muay Thai gym?
Yeah, so I actually didn't begin until 2003. There was only maybe 3 or 4 gyms in Vegas that even claimed they taught Muay Thai. So that helped me narrow it down. I found those 4. And then out of those 4, I think there was 2 that offered one-on-one lessons. And then out of those 2, only one of them had instructors from Thailand. So for me, and my perception was, you're gonna do it from the home country, and that's where you need to go. So that's how I was able to kind of narrow it down to find the place. And I was very fortunate that that gym was there in Vegas, Master Tati's, and had such solid instruction and trainers and, you know, former fighters. And I was very, very blessed to just have this kind of gold mine in the one place I happen to live in, you know, where there's, even at this stage, you know, there's very few really quality gyms throughout the country. I mean, there are some, but it's few and far in between, and more often than not, you're training with people that are just claiming they teach that, and you know, that was going on back then. But I was just fortunate to come across that gym, and it really helped me get to where I got to.
Yeah, I got a little lucky, and I worked with a guy who, I believe the name of the gym was called the Shark Tank or somewhere around that. It was over here in Upland. I grew up in SoCal, and I was working with him a lot, and he was a heavyweight, and he would kind of tell me and show me fights and things like that. And I would just beg him, you know, every day, will you teach me? Will you teach me? You know, show me something. You know, I watch it. I want to learn. I'm willing to learn. It took him maybe a year and a half, and then finally I got the text of, if you want to learn, meet me in my backyard at this day. And it was, I mean, for me, at the time I thought, man, this is kind of, you know, I'm expecting a giant gym, and there's good equipment everywhere. I mean, we were training on a rug in a backyard. There was a old heavy bag that smelled like dog piss, probably hard as a rock at the bottom of it, you know. But he 100% instilled a lot of just good fundamentals and those type of things in me. And I grew to appreciate it more. And I think that was a better route for me, because, you know, I don't think I would have learned as much or kind of been humbled by it if I would have gone to one of the bigger gyms that, you know, there's a million people there, and you know, I'm just one of 100, and, you know, everything's brand name and all this kind of stuff, and coaches are consistently moving in and out. No, are you born and bred Vegas? I know you spent some time.
No, I spent my youth mainly on the East Coast. We actually moved around constantly. I was born in Reading, Pennsylvania, lived in New York, lived in Georgia, lived in Oregon, Colorado, back to Georgia. I moved to Vegas 94 or 95, I believe. And that's where I kind of just, even though I kind of grew up everywhere, that's really where I felt like I grew up, just because at that age and at that time, and where I spent, you know, 20 years, my upbringing was really there.
Yeah. No, let's go. Let's start off, or just kind of follow up with your, you know, your 23, I believe you said when we started. You kind of getting more into it. What kept you on the path? And a big question I ask everybody when they tell me when they first started: would you consider yourself coachable at that moment in your life?
Yeah, I feel like I was very coachable. One, because I knew how far behind I was starting at such a late age. And, you know, I came up in sports. I understand, you know, what it takes to get good at something. I skated for like 10 years. I understood the process, right? I think a lot of people haven't gone through that. You don't realize the work that it takes, and how slow it is, and
Definitely
how painful it is. And
Yes,
if you've never pushed yourself in an area, regardless of what it is, physical, mental, anything, you know, it's like the same kind of process applies to anything you want to be good at. You're going to suck for a really long time. You got to work really hard. You got to slave away day in and day out, and then eventually you'll get there. So I understood that from day one, you know, and that helped me to really push myself. And again, as well as starting so late, I always knew I was so far behind where I would have been if I had started when I was a little kid.
Yes,
So I always felt the sense of playing catch up. Every session I did, every day, that's all I thought about was pushing myself as hard as possible, because I wasn't where I would never get to where I wanted to be, because I was starting so late. So that was a constant motivational thing that I had from the day I started to today.
Yeah, and I know how big you were on having the right people around you. Who was there to keep you on track? Who was there to keep you motivated? I mean, you sound yourself like you knew what it was going to take to be where you want to be. So you
Hmm.
put the work in yourself, but did you have friends that were, you know, for myself, I got maybe two friends that are into the sport. Everyone else kind
Hmm.
of jokes with me and acts like they know, but they really don't. So did you have that many people or that much support to just keep you there every day and hey, go train, you need to train, why aren't you training?
Fortunately, I've never needed that because I've always just I am that person. You know, I don't need somebody to tell me to get up and do it. I'm the one that's there overdoing it.
Uh-huh.
You know, and as I was coming up, there was a lot of people training in all different levels, but I wouldn't say there was many people around me that had the same mentality that I did. They were on, you know, different stages, doing it for different reasons. There was a fighter or two that were kind of stopping fighting and that had already kind of gone through that process. So I did have some people who motivated me as far as like where the levels were and that kind of thing. But it wasn't, I wouldn't say I had a lot of people like one-on-one, like we're kind of partners. I'm pushing you, you're pushing me. That really developed much later on, where I got a really solid team of solid fighters, and I still felt like I was just in my own world in the sense that this was it for me. You know, there was nothing else. There was no other thing. There's no other career. There's no other family. I didn't have those other aspects to distract me or to keep me pull me off course where a lot of people did. Even though they were able to fight really well and progress a lot, I felt like I was alone in that sense.
Now, at your beginning stages, noticing how hard it's going to be and noticing, you know, or understanding how much time it's going to take and the effort. I know you were willing to put it in there. Was there ever a time where, hey man, my shins are taking a beating. I'm tired of getting clinched up and kneed and beat up a little bit. Like, was there ever a time where you thought about maybe, this might not be for me and maybe I should just go back to boxing or something like that?
You know, like a lot of things like that, I was very fortunate to have to answer those questions early on,
Mm-hmm.
where a lot of people don't until much later. And then, you know, whether the answer is yes or no, it changes a lot. So for me, it was my first fight, which was 9 months in. I got the shit kicked out of me, like so bad. I got stopped in the third round. Now, granted, I fought a guy that was 20 pounds heavier than me and he had 30 fights already, whatever. That didn't matter. After I lost that next day, or you know, right after the fight, I had to question like maybe this isn't for me.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm not supposed to do this because everything up to that point, all the training from the day I started to then was just constant progression. There was very few times I would say, oh, I'm not getting better or everyone's so much better than me. It was just I feel like I set my sights so high that I didn't really view the small ups and downs. It's
Uh,
just like no matter what, I'm going in the right direction.
yeah.
But then when that happened, that was such a dramatic thing. I had to ask myself, is it worth it? Do you want to do this anyway? Do you want to keep pushing yourself? And fortunately, I did have to ask myself that question, and I did answer yes. I want to do this. It doesn't matter if I'm the best in the world. It doesn't matter if I'm the best ever. I can be the best that I can be, and the only way I'm going to figure that out is to keep going. And I understood that after that first fight that all those external things shouldn't be the real motivator. It's how good can I get for me, not
Definitely.
how good can I get in comparison to what other people have done.
Yeah.
You
I
know, so
was
that was also something.
I was talking to Mr. Robert Drysdale, I think it was last week, and I know he's did a lot of time out there in Vegas too, but we
Hmm.
were talking about the I don't know if you saw the Last Dance, the whole Chicago Bulls last season Michael Jordan type thing.
Oh, the documentary they did.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I know about it. I haven't watched it yet. No.
It's a good watch, but one of the big things that I took away from it was, you know, I didn't feel like Jordan was really the best at anything other than he just wanted to be the best and would expect nothing less from himself. And I was talking to him about, you know, is that a work ethic thing? You know, do you feel that's something that you can be taught, or do you feel like that's just wiring? That's just some people are wired that way and some people aren't.
I think most things can be learned. I feel like we're all gifted with certain things, which can either be improved or diminished over time, and depending on how we approach it. Everybody is born with certain levels of drive, of strengths, of weaknesses,
Hmm.
and I think far too often we rely on those as well. I don't have that, and they do, so I can't do it.
Hmm.
Where you might have so many other things that they don't, that they wish they had.
Yeah.
And it's not just that one piece. That there's countless factors that go into whether you make it or not. And having a strong work ethic and having a never give up attitude, and like those are the two most important things. And that doesn't matter even about what your skill is, because your drive can overcome your lack of skill, and vice versa. A lot of people that were gifted with a lot of natural abilities might not have that same drive and work ethic. So when things do get difficult, when they do have to keep pushing, they tend to fall by the wayside. And I saw that a lot coming up with in like the amateur ranks with really naturally gifted people would do really well for a while, and they'd crush a lot of people, but eventually that lack of work ethic catches up to you. And
Hmm.
now you got these people that don't have the talent that you do, but their work ethic overtakes everything, and eventually those things even out, and then they surpass you, because that's a tough thing to learn later on, is work ethic, if you didn't
Definitely.
learn it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know you said you skated. Did you keep the same sort of ethic with your skating?
No, skating for me was more, I wasn't really trying to pursue it in the way that I want to be the best I could ever be. I just loved to do it, so I just had fun, and I got really good at it for a while, but it was never, I never had that drive to push past that point of like, I
Was
want to
that
be the greatest.
sort of your outlet to, you give all your time and heart to Muay Thai, and this is kind of my time to hang out and have some fun?
Well, that was way before I'd ever even started. I mean, I
Oh.
stopped skating when I was like 18 or 19. But I started when I was probably 8 or 9. So I skated for about 10 years. And then, I was always, like I said, I was always a physical person. I love to compete. I love to push myself in those ways. But yeah, there was a big gap between skating and fighting.
No, let's go. You just lost your first fight. I think you win nine in a row or so after.
Yeah,
What's the
yeah.
second fight like? Yeah, I mean, what next fight comes up? How do you feel? Are you nervous? Is the first fight in the back of your head? How do you prepare yourself for that next one?
A little bit of both. There was obviously you don't want that to happen again, but at the same time, that was a motivator to me. I
Mhm.
mean, the biggest motivator for me was that first fight. I mean, I gassed out in like 30 seconds because, you're just going crazy and you
Yeah.
don't know what you're doing. You don't know how to control yourself. It had nothing to do with whether I was in shape. I just didn't understand that. And another really important lesson I learned is you could be the best fighter in the world, but if you can't function, if you can't breathe, it doesn't matter how good you are. So I vowed that would be one piece I would always have over everybody else, because that's the one thing nobody else can control, is like how hard I push myself. Even if my skill level's not there, I know I can push myself harder than anybody else. And I kind of clicked over after that first fight that no, that will never be a factor of why I lose a fight,
Hmm.
because I'm not a shape,
Yeah.
you know. Um, so that was the driving force. But yeah, that second fight, it was stressful, but at the same time, I had already answered that question in my mind. Like, yeah, if I lose this fight, that sucks, but it's going to be a learning lesson, and I'm going to get better, and I'm going to learn. So, it was a little bit of both. I mean, I was very ecstatic. I ended up knocking the guy out and stopping him, and it really felt like another shift, another mental shift. Like, all right, I got to see both sides. I got knocked out, and I got to knock
Yeah.
somebody out,
Little
and
balance. Yeah.
yeah, and how much, how much the fight in itself is such a small fraction of time, and you can't necessarily feel like you're a winner or loser just because of a fight.
Hmm.
That's it's one little piece. It's a measuring device for a lot of things, but it doesn't really equate to whether you worked hard or whether you didn't work hard. There's so many other factors that go into it. It's a progressive thing with all these elements to fighting goes, and whether you win or lose a fight could vary drastically depending on infinite numbers of things. But yeah, I was very happy to win that, and I wanted to keep that going. And like I said, I learned a lot of these lessons were instilled in me from the very beginning, and the more I went on, the more solidified they became.
Okay. Yeah. Now, did you spend any time on your strength and conditioning throughout this? I know the science behind strength and conditioning has just come so far from, the 90s and early 2000s. Growing up, for me, it was a lot of, 2-a-days and workout, workout, workout. Really didn't care too much about rest and your mind and things like that. Did you have any of that, or was it just, hey man, I'm young and I'm ready to
No,
go and I'm ready to fight?
no, I didn't know. I didn't really know anything about that. I mean, I trained incredibly hard, but I didn't supplement it with other training. I just did the tie, the tie way. I came up under ties. I go run and hit pads really hard and hit the bag a lot. So it was a lot of that. And it wasn't until maybe 2008, 7 or 8, I think it was my fourth pro fight, maybe. I started working with Norm Turner, who was the conditioning coach at Syndicate, which was this other gym I worked out at,
Mm-hmm.
and started getting into a lot more of those types of exercises. And that completely took it to a whole nother level. It really understood, strength and conditioning and developing your body internally and externally. And, prior to that, I was just a crazy kid, old kid.
Yeah, well, even at that time, did you understand that there was still another level of good you can be, or did you
Yeah,
already feel like,
because we all watched the old school. We had all these VHS tapes of the 90s and 2000s of just the great fighters, and even the current ones. We would see we'd get the tapes about a month after the fights happened. But yeah, I understood where the levels were. I mean, you don't really understand it completely until you're immersed in that culture and you are in Thailand and you do train with these people, and you see them fight. You're like, oh shit, that's like,
yeah,
it's so much higher than you imagine it is. But I understood that I was nowhere near any of that. So
yeah.
again, I always kept my sights on the impossibility of greatest ever.
Now, how long into your career was the first time you actually went out to train in Thailand? And second, I've never been myself, but I hear that the amount of cigarettes they smoke while training is just outrageous. Do they care at all for anything like that, or are they that's just the way they're built?
Well, the older ones do, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of them obviously spent their whole youth and upbringing training their ass off and killing themselves. As they get older, as they become trainers, as opposed or less full-time fighters, they start drinking more, they start smoking more, and yeah, they become just that. But as far as the, active fighters, no, they don't. That's
Okay.
Joe Schilling and Romy. They smoke,
Yeah.
and they can do it. But there, I would say there's very few high level fighters who smoke.
And what at what point of the career do we spend our first, day there, or just getting out there? And were you taken back by the entire culture? I know that for the most part, a lot of those kids are there working. I mean, they're fighting, but they're working. I understand that, some of them are even using this fight money and to send back to their families and things like that.
Oh, all of them are. That is exactly what they're doing. They don't have a lot of options for work and for success, and what a child can make fighting, is something that more than an adult can make working in the fields or working some, low level job. It's not like it is here where they do this as a hobby. Nobody does it for a hobby.
mm,
I would say very few people do it for a hobby. It's very serious. It's work. It's their livelihood. It's their family. It's their gym. And yes, they are employees of these gyms. So that level of dedication and severity is it comes out of their pores. You can't help but feel that when you're there, feel that when you're fighting them, feel that when you're training with them. This isn't fun. This isn't um, I'm just going to do this, but I got this other job over here.
Mm-hmm.
This is life and death for me. And being immersed in that culture relatively early on. The first time I went to Thailand was 2007. So I was about 4 years in. And yeah, I was blown away by the level they were at such an early age. I mean, when you first get there, they have you clenching with like the little kids who are just still crushing you.
Yeah.
And then eventually you get better and you get stronger. And, I remember the first time I dumped one of the kids, momentarily I felt really proud and happy. And then I realized it's a child. I outweigh him by 30 pounds.
Yeah.
And it humbles you, which is great. We all need to be humbled, and then you progress up the levels in the ages until eventually you're training with the highest level guys and the big guys. So it's it's like there's a constant new levels in this art. No matter how high you go, there's always another level. There's always better, stronger, faster, more developed people. And being kind of thrown into that relatively early on was an extreme motivator. I was already very motivated already, but then when I got to see that and see like this is basically the majority of the people here could kill everybody that fights in America. So it's very, very humbling, and it was really, for me, it was about gaining their respect. Not even so much a skill thing. It was I refuse to be broken by the training, by anything. I'm going to do everything I'm told to do, more than I'm told to do, and I'm never going to quit. I'm never going to stop, and I'm just going to push myself to every degree. And the camp I was at, we did 10-minute rounds on this it was basically a piece of concrete was their ring with a rug over it, which was awful and just destroyed your feet, and it was terrible. And obviously it's incredibly hot over there and everything. And, I was literally dying every day, but the only thing going through my head is I refuse to stop. If I pass out, I pass out, but I'm just going to keep going. And I refuse to hold myself back. And after, that first day or two, I could see that I gained at least their respect. When I first got there, it was like, even the camp I was at, like they didn't have foreigners there. This was, one back in that day, and also the gym I was at was very secluded and not one foreigners would really go to. And so when I got there, I felt and I saw the looks of this guy, like now we got to deal with this guy like taken away from our time, which I understand now. When somebody comes in your gym and they're not very serious, they're taking their time away from you, and that kind of lower level energy and dedication, you feel that. That's one thing about being in Thailand is you're surrounded by people who are looking the same direction as you. They have that same motivation. They want to be the best. They want to train as hard as they can. And that's one of the, I would say, the bigger factors about why you want to go there and train, is just being immersed in that that mentality.
What was your thought when you first found out what a Y crew was? Did they teach you that while you were in Vegas, or was that something you
Yeah. So all of my, every single instructor I had was straight from Thailand. They didn't barely speak very much English. So I got to learn about that day one. I understood that. And, I think I never had these kind of preconceived notions about what's cool, what's not, what's manly, what's not. I was just like, everything these people do is hardcore. Like everybody's a badass, so whatever, and I saw the beauty in it, and a lot of that is just naturally kind of how I am. I don't have that kind of machismo thing where like, oh, they're dancing, that's stupid, why are they doing that? So I've always seen the kind of beauty in other cultures, and so I really appreciated it.
Yeah, I have a friend who trains out there from time to time. He actually goes and fights and uses the money to help pay for schools and things like that out there. But when he comes down, we train, and he's so used to just training out there that when he's holding mitts for me, it's a combination of grunts and shouts. So it's like the language barrier is there, but you still know what they're saying, and he's just
Yeah.
like, like doing things like that at me, and but I know what he's saying, and he's like, man, that's, we don't speak the same language, but we
Yeah.
know what we're doing, and it is something there. Now, to get into that gym, did you have some sort of connect in there, a friend of a friend?
No,
Just walk
as I
over.
said, I called. It just happened to be the one I ended up going to. I called a few gyms. Um, as I said, I was trying to find a place that offered private lessons, and this was one of the few that did, and it was the only gym that had Thai instructors. So I lucked out,
Yeah.
obviously, because yeah, there was it just happened to be this gold mine of knowledge, and I just stumbled across it.
Yeah, so we're kind of getting. When did we get up to the point where we got the call for like lion fights, or like the WBC, things like that, or were there
I,
scouts? Were people looking at you? Was it something you kind of knew, or?
I'd say around 2008, 2007, 2007, 2008, I basically fought everyone there was to fight in the States, more or less. And I couldn't get any fights anymore. I literally was begging people for fights. I did 2 boxing fights on like 2 days notice. I did a Sanchao fight. I was fighting people in different weight classes and doing anything I could to stay active. And I just could not get any fights. And the majority of the people that I trained with were fighting in the UFC, fighting in Pride and all these other organizations, and everyone's like, why don't you just do MMA? You can get more fights, you can get paid, which is great. So I was like, I had no concept of, or no ideas of ever making $1, let alone getting a decent paycheck. So that was really difficult because Muay Thai is what I love. It's my passion. But if I'm not even able to do that, I'll take the next best thing, whether it's kickboxing or boxing or MMA. And it was tough for me not to quit, but I never wanted to half-ass anything. Like if I'm gonna do MMA, that's all I'm gonna do. I'm gonna be the best MMA fighter that I can be. If I'm gonna do boxing, I'm gonna be the best boxer I could ever be. I'm not gonna tip my toes in this place, in this pool. And I understood that about myself and just in general about it. So that really kept me from ever giving up Muay Thai. And going into 2009, I made it my New Year's resolution. I said, I'm going to give Muay Thai one more year. I'm going to push it as hard as I can. If by the end of the year, things haven't progressed and picked up, I'm going to switch. I was like, I'm going to switch over to MMA, and I'm just going to go all in there. And about, I think it was 2 days after New Year's, I got a call from Dennis Warner, and he's like, hey, you want to fight for the WBC title next week? Like, yeah, okay. And I think I'd just taken like a month off and, was not ready for it. But, I was like, that's what I asked for. You better step up to the plate. So, rushed to get my passport and everything. And Mark flew over there with me. I ended up fighting, Kang En, who was the international WBC champ at the time. Lost a split decision, which everybody said I won. Even he came up to me afterwards, and I knew the deal going over there. I'd fought in other countries and other people's hometowns enough to know that if you don't win or convincingly or knock them out, you can't complain about not getting a decision.
Yeah.
It's never even. I didn't even think about it in an emotional way. I was like, yeah, whatever. And I actually snapped my ankle in that fight in the 4th round, tore all of my tendons, and still ended up, finishing the fight. But right after the fight, the director of the WBC at the time was like, we're going to get you a rematch in Vegas. Don't worry about it. I was like, all right. So they actually set the rematch for July. But then I had to rehab my ankle and everything, but I got ready and everything. And going into July, 2 days before the fight, we found out that none of the Chinese fighters were coming over because they didn't get their visas in time. And the fight was off. And I was just like, oh, dude, because I had killed myself not only to recover from the injury, but to get back into training and everything. And, you know, I'd really put everything into that. Fortunately, Justin Greskowitz stepped up, and we ended up fighting at the next weight class up, and I ended up knocking him out and then winning the welterweight title. And then I ended up having the rematch a month later with Kang En, who I was supposed to fight. Ended up knocking him out. I actually ended up winning 3 titles that year, and then you know, things really progressed from that point on.
And what 2 questions. What does that do to your mindset? You know, preparing for a fight, getting ready. I see it a lot. I'm a huge fan of MMA, and I keep up with it, but I always wonder, you know, mentally, as much as this is a game of physical or physicality, I know that mentally, you know, it takes a big toll. And I always wonder,
Yeah.
you know, what's it like to mentally prepare to go to war with somebody to only find out a day or the day before that, hey, no fight, sorry, you know, is there any sort of fatigue that goes into that?
For sure. You know, again, I was very fortunate or unfortunate to learn all these lessons early. You know, I by that point, I probably had 20, 30 fights fall through, whether it was last minute, whether it was a week before, a month before. That's why I was always fighting people in different weight classes.
Yeah.
It was so bad to one point, whenever there would be a fight, I was like, you have to have 3 people lined up for me, because if somebody backs out, I need a backup.
Yeah.
And this one time I did that. I told the coach that was putting the fights on, I was like, you got to have 3 people for me. And every day I was like, you have them? You have them? He's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then I got there, all 3 people backed out, and we're at the weigh-ins. I was like, look, if you don't get somebody on in that ring with me, you're going to fight me, and we're going to fight each other.
Yeah.
He's like, don't worry, I'll get it. And that was actually my first boxing fight. When I got back, he's like, all right, I have an option, but it's a boxing fight, and the guy outweighs you by 20 pounds. I was like, that's fine. I actually would always bring my boxing shoes with me just in case. So I had my boxing shoes. I ended up stopping him
Nice.
in the second round. And, you know, so a lot of those things, lessons I learned earlier, it's not like it makes it any easier, just mentally, you understand that can literally happen at any moment. It can happen in the ring, before the ring, a month before, a week before. So you just kind of already are schooled in that, you know, the letdown of that happening. Not to say it doesn't take a toll, because it definitely does. And it's the worst thing ever. Is when you're that close, within like a week, it's devastating. It's devastating. And, you know, fortunately, I've only had a couple that I wasn't able to find a replacement or a different fight or something like that. But when it doesn't happen, you're just lost. You're like, what am I supposed to do? It's like you've done all this homework.
Yeah.
Now you don't have a test. Like, what do I do
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
this? What do I do with this? And then, I
I,
mean, you just make a choice. Like, I can use this and get better, or I can go take a month off and get fat and lose everything that I've gained.
yeah.
So that's another, you know, lesson I understood. Like, just because these things happen doesn't mean you have to get worse from them. You can get
Yeah.
better.
It's just kind of as I get older, and I'm not the oldest person, but one of the things I've learned is just to kind of stop trying to control everything and just kind of give in to, hey man, things are going to
Yeah.
happen. And, you know, whether you like it or not, whether you understand it or not much you can do to change it. So it's helped. It has, there's been a lot of things, you know, that I was stressed out about before, and
Mhm.
then I kind of gave in and just gave up. And it's like, well, okay, you know, life
Yeah.
goes on and I still got to do these things. So, second part of that question though, multiple title holder, do they all feel the same? Does it get to a point where it's just like, cool, another belt, here we go, you know, let's get something else?
uh, More or less. I don't know. The first WBC belt was pretty awesome. You know, I obviously came up watching boxing, so I knew about the WBC. And then when they started sanctioning Muay Thai fights, I think it was 2 or 3 years prior to me getting it. I actually went to the first fights they ever had. It was in LA. I don't remember what year that was, 2007 maybe. So I always wanted one of those pretty green belts. And then when I finally got that, especially with the rematch and knocking him out and overcoming the injury, that was a big one. The lion fight one, again, because of the circumstances, going into that fight injured, building up after the injury that stopped me fighting in the first place. And then, starting with line fight, the first ever ones on national television, a lot of factors made that more important. The belt in itself, those belts, they don't really mean anything to me. I think it's more about the significance of the event, who the person I fought was, how the fight went down. I always view belts as just trophies that you can wear.
Yeah.
But that's you wear them in the ring, and that's about it. So
Yeah.
Yeah, they all hold a certain level of significance to me, but the fight in itself will always hold more than any belt will ever hold.
No, I believe it was Eli Manning. I think he said something along the lines of, "It hurts more to lose than it feels good to win." Agree?
Oh yeah,
For
definitely.
sure. I mean, but
Yeah,
in your case,
yeah.
with the rematch and
Certain fights. I mean, I would say those ones are the exceptions. Those ones where you've overcome something significant and or a rematch that you lost and then
Mhm.
made up for. Those ones do stand out, but yeah, more often than not, the losses and the bad days, those things will far outweigh the feeling of winning. It's really just a question of what you do with it. Like
Mhm.
what are you gonna do with that bad feeling? What are you gonna do with that bad day? You can either use it and get better, or use it and get worse.
How do you? This is kind of off subject, but how do you get, like, how do you let your anger and those feelings out? Is that something I honestly, I went through a time where I was just, um any sort of angry or negative sort of emotions would just get repressed, right? I'd try to consider myself a happy guy, an optimistic guy, and I'd rather just be cool with you than argue.
Mm-hmm.
So even if I was upset at you, I'd act like I wasn't, and any ill feelings, I would just push them down. And one of the things I would do to try to let them out was I would hit a heavy bag. And when I got that point where I felt like I needed to do something, I go hit a heavy bag. But then I started thinking, well, maybe I'm training myself to, every time I'm angry, I need to go out and hit and kick and punch something. So maybe this isn't the best
Yeah.
thing to do, you know? Is there certain things that you try to do to just kind of let it out?
I don't know. I've always understood that for me, getting anger out in an angry way, like if I hit the bag angry, or if I fight and I'm angry, I suck. Like it messes me up. Like there's certain people that need to be angry. I
Yeah.
always use Joe Schilling as an example. I'm like, he needs that anger. He needs to hate that person to a
Yeah.
degree.
Can't
I'm the
talk crazy.
opposite. I don't I don't do well at all, because that rematch actually with King N was the one time I fought somebody that I was angry at him, because there was a lot of stuff that happened in the first fight, some fouls and just shady stuff. So I was pissed off at him, and I ended up getting the crap kicked out of me for the first 3 rounds, because I was fighting angry, and
Mhm.
it wasn't good. It wasn't good for me. So I think for me it's more about an energy and being passionate, just not an emotional thing. And I think though that anger gets expressed, and I get that kind of negativity out without it being at the forefront of my mind. Like naturally it gets out just by being physical and you know exhausting yourself and doing all these things that kind of naturally tone you down. Because when I don't train and stuff, I feel it just starting to build up in me. I understand why people are so angry driving around and
Yeah.
not wanting to let people in. I'm like, yeah, fuck everybody.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why I understood that also early on, that if I'm not physical or creative, or these things that I'm expressing energy and emotion, then that's gonna build up, and then that's got to go somewhere, and usually it's not gonna go somewhere good.
Yeah. And were you always into art? Were you always into drawing? And I mean, I see a lot of stuff that you do. Do you use
Yeah,
those as your outlet?
that was one thing that's been there since birth. I've always been artistic and driven artistically in really every endeavor that I partake in.
Yeah. So let's keep going with the fight career. I know you even went as far as writing a book about it, Dancing with Saenchai. what was that like for you? What was the atmosphere like? I watched it, and I watched it a while back, but in all honesty, I felt like there was a case for you, but I also understood
Mhm.
that there was you're in the home, his house, probably, and
Mhm.
like you said before, if you're not going to beat him, then don't complain about getting the judge's decision.
Yeah, yeah. Well, as far as the decision went, I was like, it was one of those things where even if I had gotten the decision, I think what the negativity that would have been put on me by
Oh
everybody
yeah,
else, I was like, I don't want that. So really, I feel like it went as good as it could have possibly went. I performed better than I could ever have hoped and dreamed for,
mm-hmm.
and I don't even view mm, almost any fight, whether I won or lost. Like, how do I feel about the fight?
Mm-hmm.
And really, that's been a motivational factor for me from the beginning, because my favorite fighters, I never cared what their wins and losses were. Most of the time, I didn't even look at the decision. I just looked at the fight. Like, this
Yeah,
fight's awesome. I
yeah,
want to
definitely.
I want to be that. So, Arturo Gatti was always, a hero of mine before I even saw Muay Thai. So that mentality and persona of just being a fighter and a warrior, and wins and losses happen, but how you go out there is outweighs all of those things. So I've always kind of been that way. The atmosphere, that was the craziest fight, probably the most energy of anything. Even, I fought in the King's Birthday with like 100,000 people. That didn't compare to the energy that was in that room on that night. With obviously with Saenchai fighting, the energy's already going to be high. But then
Mm-hmm.
now you got me, the American, the punk, this
Yeah.
kid coming in to challenge this guy, and it was crazy, man. Like,
Was there any point where you felt that the Thai crowd was on your side? Um,
yeah,
any
I
sort of
think,
shift?
I think one thing that not a lot of Americans recognize is in most other countries, it's not uh, a pro versus con. I love this guy, that means I gotta hate the other guy. It's
Mhm.
a appreciation of the battle, appreciation of what it takes to get in there. Um, so you're never gonna see people, rarely see people in other countries boo fighters.
Mhm.
They'll cheer for them or they'll be silent. They're not gonna
Yeah.
boo them. That's very much an American problem we have here, is booing people that are literally putting their lives on the line to entertain you. Um, it was I think the whole crowd just appreciated what was going on. It wasn't some people were for him and some people were for me. It was,
Mhm.
they were just for the event in itself. And that, I think that's what also added to the level of uh, energy in the environment. It was just watching this thing that shouldn't ever happen, and it is happening, and it's happening now, and we're watching it. I mean, there was probably 2,000 people there, and that was it. It was in a little ballroom, and it was yeah, that I it's not something you could even describe. If you were there, you were there, but definitely watching it on tape does zero justice, especially because I don't have the good footage, which hopefully one day I'll track down. Fortunately, my friend actually recorded that for me.
Oh,
So the
nice.
video, the tape that's up, that's good, is a recording he did, but they filmed it in the ring. I just have never gotten it.
No, I actually had the opportunity. I worked with a organization for veterans, and one of my good friends was fighting, and he had asked me to hold mitts, and I was holding mitts for him for the camp, which was awesome. But then he actually asked me to corner, and it was up here in Ontario at it used to be the Citizens Business Arena. I think it's the Toyota Arena now. But I mean, we didn't get the win, but one of the biggest things I take from that day was the experience, and it was sitting behind this giant black curtain, waiting for his music to come on and waiting for his name to be called. I myself I'm trying to whisper things in his ear to pump him up, but I'm realizing like I'm getting choked up. Like I'm probably talking in a high pitched voice, and I'm trying to say all these tough things that are gonna make him so pumped up, but I'm literally almost to tears because I can feel the energy of just everything around it and the whole vibe of the situation. Um, I mean, what is that like? I know you said you can't really explain it too well in the words, but
Yeah.
does it obviously takes an effect on the fighter, am I right?
For certain, for certain. I actually do get super emotional before the fight, when especially when we're standing there about to go out. Almost 100% of my fights, I've gotten emotional, and just very, I feel very blessed and very grateful to be doing this thing that I shouldn't be doing. I shouldn't even be alive right now, considering, my upbringing and the
Hmm.
way I went. I I feel every day is very much a gift. And when I get to do that one thing that I love to do so much, that I slave and kill myself for, it doesn't matter who I'm about to fight. That you know increases the level, but every time, almost every single time, I get super emotional, and very grateful, and quiet. I get quiet for the right beforehand, every time.
Yeah, yeah. It's like I said, I was trying my best to be tough. I couldn't do it. I was thinking of just the hardest, most macho bravado things to say, but it was coming out like I was speaking falsetto. For the fight though, did you prepare any different mentally? Did you do any sort of meditation, anything like that beforehand?
No, it was just it was one of those, fights for me are always just everything I have, no matter what I can do. With this one, it was on my mind, in my heart, on my body, 24 hours a day. I was over the course of the time I was preparing for that fight, I just became a completely different person. I was on such a different level mentally during that fight, and leading up to that fight. I can't even convey what that was. I was almost checked out of my humanity, and just
Mhm.
became this machine. And it was one of the, during the training, some days I would wake up and think, you have no business doing this. You're gonna die. This is a joke. And the majority of the people talking about this fight, that was what they said. That is what the conversation going on in the community was. Why are you doing this? You have no business in there. This is just a joke. He's just gonna put you on another highlight reel.
Mhm.
I'm like, yeah, maybe not.
Yeah.
And then other days I would wake up and it would be the same as any other fight. Like, I'm just gonna go, I'm gonna fight. And I didn't view him as this godlike person. And so it was. There were some days that was it was rough, and some days it wasn't. But regardless, it was like, I'm going to prepare as best as humanly possible. It doesn't matter whether I'm confident or not. I'm gonna kill myself to get ready for this fight, and that's what I did. I just killed myself, like I always do, but just
Yeah.
another level. It was some people, well, up to that point in time, everybody that I fought was way more advanced than I was. But after that, you start fighting people. Some are below you, some are above you, and I never even had to think about bringing my own level of concentration, and intensity up, because they were so far above me. It
Yeah.
wasn't even a it's not a choice. Like, this person can kill you if you don't bust your ass, if you don't maintain that level. So, with him, that wasn't even a question. I couldn't even think about it, because it was so high. It was just, this is a life and death situation. You better treat every moment getting ready for this, and every moment in it like this is life and death.
Yeah. I believe your last fight was with Bellator, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Kickboxing. Any difference in promotion wise? I know they're doing their best to actually make it more mainstream. I don't understand why it's not more mainstream
Yeah.
now, especially with how big MMA's been getting, and
Hmm.
it's still not a household thing, but it's much bigger than what it was before.
Yeah.
Did you like the promotion? Do you like doing press conferences and things like that?
Bellator is by far the best promotion I think there is on this planet.
Nice.
And that all starts with the owner, Scott Coker. He has such a passion for the sport. His passion is kickboxing and Muay Thai,
Mhm.
not MMA. He does MMA because he's a businessman. He knows that. But he's actually has such a passion for it, and that's really what got me on board. As I understood that, and I understood why he wanted to do this. He wanted to give people that platform, and he understood that it was going to take time, and it's not like he could go out there and do one big show, but what it's going to cost to do that, and what you're going to gain from that. That's where so many other promotions have failed, is they try to go too big on day one, and you're not going to gain anything from that. It's a slow, steady thing, just like everything else. Just like becoming a good fighter, it takes time, and effort, and energy, and it sucks. And you want it to be quick, but quick isn't the right way, and the right way is the long, hard way. And I think they're doing what they can, and they're one of the few promotions that is really stepping up and doing that, even though it's not making them any. I mean, they lose money every time. But he understands that, and they really are such an amazing promotion, because any fighter can tell you, most promotions, almost every promotion we fight for, they treat you like a slave. They treat you like an employee, which technically you are. They treat you like a piece of shit. If you're not going to do it, I can get 10 other guys who would probably pay to be here. And
somebody else made it.
Yeah, so that's been what's been difficult in this sport, is they've always known they could get somebody to fight for free, and which is what they would do. So that mentality that he has gets passed down to the everybody that works for him, and it's in the atmosphere. Even weigh-ins are very pleasant. I think everybody understands that that's what's going on. We all feel like we're part of this promotion, as opposed to being just employees that are replaceable. Everyone is putting in on helping this sport grow, and I think that comes across. And so my experience with them has been really great, particularly at this stage in my career, doing something different. That was all very motivational for me. It was almost like starting over in a lot of ways, even though it wasn't.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate what he's doing, especially you bringing it up that, look, man, they're losing money every event, but to get out there for the fans and to, have that out there, it is huge. I know ESPN's tried it a few times, and I think with Lion, it lasts for a bit, and then you don't really hear too much about it. Who's got the best equipment, rather, like, glove wise and the treatment and things like that,
So I'm very biased because they're my sponsors, but I really do love all of Triumph United stuff. Particularly the gloves. Like, I don't think there's anybody that makes them better. Those gloves.
You got the Death Adders, or
Death Adders. Those are my favorite. Those are my favorite sparring gloves I've ever had since day one. And you would think there would be people making decent gloves out there, but it doesn't exist for some reason. It's very strange how few good gloves are out there. And I think I don't know why that is. It is, but everything all their gloves are amazing. I love them all.
Yeah, when I first got into it, I always tell people, I started out with the $40 pair of Everlast, real cheap vinyl, stuff like that. But at the time, I had the 108 wraps that don't stretch and they unravel halfway through everything. But just to be in that mindset and to do it was like just so, I felt just so good about myself. And I knew I didn't have the greatest. I actually knew a guy who was doing sales for Triumph. And I hit him up one day about a promo code, and he's like, "Hey, man, you want to be a wholesale?" I'm like, "Oh, man, sure, I'll do it. I'll start selling this stuff." But ever since then, and it's been, I want to say like 5 years now, I probably own every shirt and every pair of shorts that they have. For me personally, I'm a nobody in the sport or in the game, but I felt like they treated me like family. So I'm a pretty loyal guy, and I really don't have to be. They're a good company, but all my stuff is them, I just bought the Tiger shin guards, and I bought the Viper gloves, and I just got the Death Adders. I got a 12 ounces though.
Yeah.
I want something to hit the bag with. But yeah, they've been solid. I wish it would re-up a little bit more because a lot of their stuff sells out
Yeah.
pretty quick.
Yeah.
But they treated me like family, so I sort of give them the like, hey man, I don't need to go anywhere else. You guys treat me well,
Yeah.
so I got nothing, no complaints. I can see we're losing a little light here, so
Oh yeah.
we're gonna go to the next part, and this is gonna be the 10 questions that I ask everyone. And I kind of get the different answers. I think it's cool to see what different people think about the same questions.
Hmm.
So number one, you can do these fast or you can take your time with them. It's up to you. What's the worst advice you ever received?
You know, I don't know what the worst advice is because I've been asked that question before, um, and I don't really. I think advice is more, but by seeing what other people have done and understanding that it was not smart, you know. And I think a big one for me is you know, I came up the way I came up. I've been the way that I am, you know, humble and quiet and all these things. But I in the gym I was at, there was these two polar opposite guys, very high level fighters. One was extremely loud, obnoxious, egotistical, and then the other guy was didn't say a word. Both of them hard ass fighters,
Mm-hmm.
but you know, I think a lot of people feel that you're supposed to have this attitude and you're supposed to be angry and you're supposed to be loud and all of these things. But I got to see that you don't have to be either. You just be who you are. And I something I always try to convey to people is don't change who you are, be who you are. And you know, for a time there, Joe even started trying to be nice to people because of like all these talks at him. And I was like, whoa, don't do that. Don't do that either. I just said, you don't have to go out of your way to be a dick.
Yeah.
Like if you don't like the guy, be vocal about it. But you don't need to add that in there. This pretend promotion of things. I've always had a hate for that. If you don't like somebody, sure, vocalize it. But don't think you need that to have it be an exciting fight. The fight should speak for itself.
Yeah, that's been being pushed a lot lately, and you can tell on a lot of them what's a true dislike and what's kind of a
Yeah.
they're looking like they're doing this for show.
Yeah.
Number two, if not Muay Thai, then what?
Kickboxing.
All right, I'll take that one. Number three, dogs or cats?
Dogs.
All day, easy. All right. Number four, charcoal or propane?
Ooh.
Does it depend on the occasion?
Yeah, I would say so. I guess it depends what you're doing. Yeah, I'm gonna go with charcoal, but yeah, that would depend on a lot of things.
All right. Number five, and this is a little bit more of a serious one. Do you believe that dreams have a significance in real life?
Do I believe they have a significance?
Yes, sir.
In what way?
Just are your dreams trying to tell you something? Is your subconscious trying to tell you something?
Oh,
You believe that sometimes
whether it's your own beliefs or whether there's an actual something that's like telling you to go
yeah.
forward with these
So
things.
I when I wrote it, yeah, I wanted to see like if what you dream about while you're sleeping, does that have a significance in your path and how things are going and things like that in your life?
Oh, you mean actual sleeping dreams?
Yes, sir. Yeah. I'm not talking
Oh.
about aspirations and goals. I'm talking about sleeping dreams. Yeah.
Yeah, for certain, I would say that they do. To what level, and what they are and what they aren't, and that's up for debate. But I would say there's definitely something there that we have no concept of.
Nice. That's a good one. Let's see. Number six, and you can be specific or you don't have to be, but what's your favorite behind the scenes moments throughout your career?
Jeez, that's a hard one to figure out. There's been so many. I don't know. Just the first one that popped up. It's not my favorite. Just a crazy story. Is I almost got blown up by some pyrotechnics.
Oh.
My first professional fight was in Guadalajara, Mexico, and the guy was supposed to tell me to wait, and I started walking, And then he just grabbed me, and right in front of me, the pyrotechnics blew up on the. I almost Michael Jackson myself. That was badass.
Did that take away from your whole mindset
No,
and thought process? Oh, okay, cool. You're
no.
still laser focused. All right.
Yes, sir.
Number 7. What's the best way that Kevin Ross deals with failure?
Deals with what?
Failure.
Failure. Learns from it and pushes past it. Just gets better.
I like that. All right, 2-part question, sir. We're at number 8. Your favorite athlete or fighter of all time, and would you compete against them? Prime versus prime.
Arturo Gatti. That's tough to say because I'm not a boxer. But if he wants to do a hybrid match, yeah.
All right, okay. So I'm gonna switch this one because is a question I like to ask more I got some, sometimes I got jiu-jitsu guys on here and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
The question's supposed to be pineapples on pizza and whether you're up for that or not. But something that I always ask, especially strikers, when you're throwing a hook, are you taught here or are you taught here? What are we looking at?
You want to know how I'm taught or how I do it?
You can answer both ways because I've been told, I know there's a debate of here or here. Which way do you want to go?
Yeah, people are funny because they like to debate over what's right and what's wrong. There's nothing that's right or wrong. It's what works for you.
Yeah.
I throw a hook thumb up unless it's extended. The farther it's extended, like if it's more like an overhand, I have to turn it just because of the way my hand works.
Mm-hmm.
And all those other factors. I refuse to hook like this because I just don't like it.
Yeah.
But as I said, some people it works for and some people it doesn't. There's no right or wrong way to throw a hook.
Yeah, I've always figured it to be more situational than anything else. And honestly, with
every 100% of things are situational.
Yeah. All right. So number 10, who did you have the most fun competing against? And throughout your career, did you develop any sort of rivals?
The most fun. That's tough. I've had so many fun fights. I think that maybe Yamato and Tomahawk were probably, I don't know, that they were all fun. Those ones stand out to me as when I look back on those fights. Very few fights I watch ever. But my Tomahawk fight for sure, I watched that one every once in a while, and the Yamato one was just everything about it, fighting downtown and looking like a scene out of Street Fighter. It was just dope, man. It was so cool. It was such a cool atmosphere.
Any sort of rivalries that you felt like?
Not really. As I said, King and we had a little thing just because of our first fight. I think he's probably the only person I've fought that felt like that kind of rivalry, like we didn't like each other kind of thing. Everybody else, more of just a competitive rivalry, not a real emotional one. Everything.
Okay.
I think most people I've fought, and I think most people in this sport are very driven by the competition as opposed to an emotional response.
Okay. I got one more. I know I said 10, but I had a fan question. I had a whole bunch from, but this one I thought I'd like to know. Would you rather take an undefended inside leg kick or have your leg kick checked?
Which one would I rather?
Yeah, because I know they both hurt like hell.
Probably. I don't want to get kicked on the inside of my leg. My shins are hard as a motherfucker.
I was thinking that as I was gonna ask you, and I thought this guy's probably got cement for shins already.
I can't think of a time really when somebody checked my kick and I was like, ugh. One time I did kick a guy in his knee with my foot in Mexico, and I felt my foot kind of bend.
Ooh.
So yeah, that one sucked bad. I don't want that to happen ever again.
All right. So we're at the end of it. I'm gonna give you the time. You can plug anything you want to plug. Let everyone know where you're at. Let anyone know how to get to you, and anything else you want to talk about.
Yeah, anybody that wants to check out my stuff, you can go to my website. It's thesoulasssassin.com. Mostly active on Instagram, which is the Soul Assassin, DA Soul Assassin. I mean, I'm pretty active on all my social media. So I put out, my gear, my books, my artwork, which I'm trying to do more of. Um, I try to do a little bit of everything. It's just a matter of what people are looking for.
Mm.
My writings and things like that. As far as things to plug, I don't really have anything to plug except stuff like that, and
Okay.
what I'm always working on.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, as always, brother, I can't thank you enough for just being so cool. I reach out to a whole bunch of people, and you're one of the guys that always responds and always sees it. So, as
My
a
pleasure, man.
fan, to have you do that, I truly do appreciate it. And I thank you so much for being on. I hope you had a great time. I had a great
I
time
did.
learning
I did. It
with
was great
everything.
talking, man.
But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kevin Ross, thanks again, brother, and you take care.
Thank you. All right, then.